Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible, so if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe. Another budget set review. We will see what you can do with these cards. Are they worth it budget wise? Will you get a playable deck out of this pack, and should you be buying this pack at all? Let's start off with the review of the ultra rares and the super rares. We have WindUp Zen Maintenance, a card that is funny enough locked into windups. Like, it doesn't lock you, but you can only make it with windups. Quite crazy for the generation that came out with, because usually the Link 2s were a bit more generic and caused a bit more issues. This one, as you can say, sadly isn't, or sadly is generic. We don't really know. But yeah, it does stuff for windups. It can search you one windup card from your deck to your hand, and technically there's a second effect that you can banish one face-up windup monster you control face down and special summon one monster from your deck with the same name that card had on the field. Can be interesting for certain plays, but it does stuff, and you get away with just running one of this. So budget wise, it's not too bad. It's an ultra rare, yes, but you don't have to run like multiple of it. One is usually quite fine, and for that it actually is a useful card. So I'm not going to complain about the fact that this is an ultra rare, although for the effect it could have been a super rare as well, but let's not be too stingy with this one. We have WindUp Carrier as a matey, a card that I definitely understand as an ultra rare. You get away with one, but I'm not the massive WindUp player, but I think 2 is better than 1 if I'm not 100% mistaken. So yeah, you definitely want to be picking up one of this, if not 2, so you might have to go into some more depth of this pack for this one. Who knows, but you can try the deck out with 1 and then upgrade later on, use crafting materials. So if you only get 1 and you're like, what, possibly 4,000 or 5,000 gems that you have to spend on this one to get a good value out of the set, then yeah, this might be one of the cards you have to craft 1 of at one point, but it's not too bad. We have Despot Jet and ultra rare that it's not bad if you have one of it, but for Despot deck you don't need to have it. It does some stuff and sometimes it's kind of helpful, but in total it isn't like a super necessary card for Despots. There's some other applications where you can use this, and it's not a bad to have card, but for an ultra rare is a bit iffy, and you don't really need to craft this one either. It's a decent-ish card that you can ignore if you didn't get it. Despot Base is a bit of a problematic one. Technically in a Despot deck you don't need it, and you don't need it at 3. There is some decks I think that I've seen that focuses on the second effect, that you can banish 9 Despot cards with different names, so all of the ones from your field or graveyard, and then accept Despot Base, because it's Despot cards, it's not just Despot monsters. So in theory you could technically use this one, but you can't because it's accept Despot Base, and then shuffle all cards from your opponent's hand, field and graveyard into the deck. So if you can pull this off during your first turn, your opponent has exactly 1 card to play with. Very, very fun, but it's not that easy to pull this off. There are convoluted ways of doing this, but other than that, the first effect doesn't really overly matter for Despots in general. So if you didn't get this card and you just want to play the normal Despot variant, then it doesn't matter too much that you didn't have this one. We have WindUp Zen Meister, a card that, well, doesn't really do all that much anymore. Like, yes, you can have it, but it's a super rare that you don't overly need, and it's not that value wise, it's really not that great. The effect doesn't really do much in most decks, and yeah, I don't know, technically you can use this card in flip decks, because you can target one face-up monster you control, it's not even on the field, change that face-up monster to face-down defense position, and if you do, during the in-phase of this turn, change it to face-up attack position. It sounds like flip support. I know there are some cards where this works out with the wind-up things, but other than that, not the craziest card in general. We have WindUp Zen Mains. Also, you usually just go into generic stuff, into generic rank 3s or into generic whatever, and out of the rank 3s that this deck has, this is definitely not the best, because we already talked about the best, and it's an ultra rare. So if you get some of this or not doesn't really matter, because you don't really need this unless you want to be playing pure wind-ups, but then you're in for a hard time anyway. We have WindUp Arsenal Zen Mayo, a card that you also don't really need in windups, but this card for generic rank 5, depending on the meta, isn't terrible. You can get rid of 2 set cards on the field and destroy them. That can be helpful from time to time. And 2600 attack isn't terrible either. So if you pick up one of those, it's very nice, but for neither of those decks, you really need that one in general. Cards that you do need for WindUp is WindUp Magician, very, very important card in here, because if the effect of a WindUp monster is activated except itself, then you can special summon one level 4 or lower WindUp monster from your deck in face-up defense position. Very, very neat. So this card helps you loop tons of resources, get into tons of different cards, and you can actually also special summon another WindUp Magician, which is a bit silly, I want to say. And this effect can only be used once while this card is face up on the field, so it's a soft once per turn as well. So you can keep using multiple WindUp Magicians during your turn and loop and loop and loop. So that is very crazy. So you really want to be picking up this card. Another card you really want to be picking up is WindUp Shark, because this one works very well with WindUp Magician. And when a WindUp monster is normal special summon to your side of the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. And then technically, if you want to be playing a more Xyz focused or WindUp focused build, then the whole level modulation also kind of matters, but in the end doesn't usually matter too much in the modern variants of WindUps. We have the Despot 002, for example, is the one that they chose to make a super rare. There would have been plenty different options. They went with this one. If this card is special summoned, you can add one Despot card from your deck to your hand, so technically you can search the field spell as well. Works like this. It is a super rare. You do want to usually play 3 of this, but this is the most expensive card in the deck, basically. If you just want to be playing like purish Despots, then yeah, not too bad that one of them is a super rare. Well, technically there's the second one. We have Despot 009, but this is like the boss monster. This is the one that you usually want to be searching, and that's the one that facilitates easy OTKs with some other ones, but I don't think you play this one at 3. Not 100% sure, because there are some searches and stuff, but eventually maybe you have to play this at 3. I'm not sure. It shouldn't be, but this is, I promise, the last expensive card of Despots. Very, very neat card. It used to be a lot better when Despots came out, and nowadays it's okay. I think Despot are more of a combo deck now than actually still an OTK deck. You can still play the OTK variant, but it's not as good anymore as it used to be, because the game was a bit slower at the time when this card came out. We have WindUp Factory as super rare, but you get away with playing one. You will, if you open the pack a few times, you will eventually end up with one of them, and then you can search it out with Zen Maintenance or something. So technically you get away with just playing one. I don't know if you would play 3 if you had it. Not 100% sure, but didn't think you would. I don't know. It does search your stuff to your hand, and that is never too bad. And yeah, you technically possibly could say this card makes a lot of sense at 3. Plus it's a once per turn effect, not a hard once per turn, so yeah, can add multiple things, but usually besides Shark I don't think there's much you want to be adding to your hand either. It is what it is. We have WindUp Kitten now, and that's the rares. We're already done with the super rares, and you can see not many Despot cards in there, not many that you really need that many of. Kitten is an interesting card in Sprite these days, so there's that, but other than that, in WindUp it does, well, you can use the effect to get an effect of in a second. It's not too bad, but it's not one of the main crazy ones. I think Rat is another one that's somewhat important in windups. We have Tin Goldfish in here for some reason, very interesting. We have the 001, 003, and 004. All of them are very, very neat, and they're all at the rare slot. Then we have 005 and 6, also not too bad. Some other cards that we can kind of ignore here. Junk Sleep is also a card that technically sounds more like a flip support card, but it is what it is. Some of the more useless wind-up cards in here as well. The only other one that would matter is WindUp Hunter, but we don't have that one for I want to say obvious reasons, because it facilitates FTKs, so there is that. Other than that, the pack doesn't have too much crazy stuff anymore. We still have the normal ones, the pendulum ones for the Despots. You want to run loads of them anyway in this deck, and the tramp cards don't really matter. Let's talk about the pack a little bit. Is this good? Ish, yeah. You can build a deck afterwards. After you open this pack a few times, you will have some playable-ish deck with certain additions, certain not too expensive additions. Obviously, most decks these days will need generic support, generic cards that you splash into it, so it's very hard to say any pack getting you into like a fully playable deck, because that's usually not what it is. I think the only one where it's kind of like it is Monarchs maybe and stuff like that, but other than that, you usually need some stuff. You will get lots of the wind-up stuff if you're interested in a wind-up deck, but wind-up decks are very expensive if you want to play them in any good capacity, because you need lots of generic support, lots of generic extra deck things, because you loop so many things that yes, the power comes from your extra deck mainly, not really that much from your main deck, and you need more supportive consistency cards in your main deck as well to get into your good WindUp combos. So you have a bit of that problem, but the important WindUp cards are all in this pack, so there's that. And Despots will form a pretty okay-ish deck by themselves. You can turn it into a combo deck, you can turn it into some kind of pendulum thing, you can play it as some Mecha Phantom Beast combo, whatever deck. You can use the Despot base FTK if you really try to do it. Well, it's not like an FTK, but it's technically an FTK in reality. Having your opponent only use one card in hand usually isn't too good, so there's that as well. And as an OTK deck, it's at least playable, so there's that. I would say in general this pack value wise is somewhere like 5 to 6 out of 10 possibly. It's one of the better packs in this whole game, but it's not like amazing, not amazing meta relevant or anything, but it supplies you with lots of cards. None of them are really like good generically though, so you have to make do with that one. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, I hope you have a nice day.